Thank you for joining the October 16th, 2018 VOLTHA call. This is our first week on Sprint 9 for VOLTHA 2.0, and we do post these recordings to YouTube for the team after the meeting, so keep that in mind during the discussions and any presentations today. And with that, we will get started with today's meeting. I don't think I see Shad on the bridge yet, so we may start with a second agenda item first and then circle back to the OpenOLT adapter discussion once he's available on the call. So on the agenda today, we do have the discussion of 1.5, 2.0, and a proposed approach for the OpenOLT adapter, and that is from Shad. So we'll circle back to that in a little bit. And then we also have new JIRAs to review, and then some discussion on Sprint 9. So this is, again, the first week on Sprint 9. It's, again, targeted for 3 weeks. And we have some preliminary scope that is in JIRA currently, and a couple specific items that have been under discussion over the last week that I wanted to see if those were candidates that we could pull in for the sprint. One of those in particular from prioritization from Deutsche Telekom. And with that, let me just do a check again on the attendees. And I think we will start with the review for the new JIRAs. So 1276 is the first one on the list today. And let me refresh my screen here. So that first one is actually complete. It was included in Sprint 8, I believe. That was done by Lynn. This was need to add vendor in Resource Manager in the OpenOLT adapter. And I need to adjust my screen a little bit so I can, here we go. See this, and this is for adding the CIG OLT vendor support. So that one is complete. Any questions? And actually, Shad, I think I see you joined the bridge. I had just started with some JIRA reviews. Do you mind if we circle back to the OpenOLT adapter for the first agenda item?
Sure, yeah.
Great. And do you have anything you'd like me to give you presentation rights for?
Yes, if you could give me presentation rights.
Then let me do that. Okay, you should have them in a moment. And we can see your screen.
Hello, everybody. So this, I'll try to be quick here. I think the thing that I would like to discuss is how do we move forward, migrate from 1.x to 2.0 for the OpenOLT adapter, and any ideas that others would have thoughts with that doesn't have. So the goals seem to be one is to decide whether to do it in Python or on Go. This right now I'm assuming that we're going to go ahead with Python unless somebody comes forward and says that they really want to do it in Go and have the resources. So if we were to do it in Python, the things to think about are do we have completely separate code bases for 1.x and 2.0? Because I think it's a general consensus that 1.x would be around for some time. So I think that's the premise of this is assuming that 1.x is going to be around for some time, assuming that we don't have enough resources to work on two separate code bases for 2.0 and 1.x. Is there some way we can have some common? We can do this in a way that we kind of reusing code between 1.x and 2.0. So this is how we know is we have core both in 1.x and 2.0 adapters, and then and then the devices underneath that. And the OpenOLT adapter is right now, this is like kind of a class diagram for OpenOLT adapter. This is not subclassing really, but classes that use each other. So there's a core which talks the iAdapter interface to the OpenOLT adapter, and the OpenOLT adapter is one class per type of adapter, so there'll be one instance of this. And then there's the OpenOLT device class, which is one instance per physical device. And each OpenOLT device has support classes to do its function to do various different functionalities. So flow management. That's because OpenOLT takes the logical flow and does its own kind of decomposition. Alarm management, resource management, bandwidth manager, stats. And we could also move. So right now, what the OpenOLT device class is mostly responsible for itself is the ONU management and interface management, and that could also be moved off into support classes. And this is how it is right now, and it's served its purpose well in the sense that we've seen that. For example, BBSIM subclassed off the OpenOLT, subclass of these classes and kind of overriding what functionality that it wanted to customize. In BBSIM's case, for example, it was it had to spoof quite a few things. And looking ahead at 2.0, so this is how 1.x is. You have a core, an iAdapter interface, an OpenOLT adapter class, and an OpenOLT device, and the support classes over here. And the iAdapter interface is like a north to south interface where the core calls into the adapter. But there's also a backdoor interface going from the south to the north. That is where the adapter calls into the adapter agent into the core. And that's mostly to update the data model. So when the adapter makes some change and the KV store needs to be updated, or the other adapters need to know about it, it updates the data model. So that's a call back from the adapter into the core. That's what I call a data model. The adapter is updating the data model in the core. But it's an interface that's not captured in the iAdapter interface because it's a call that the adapter makes back into the core. So if you look at it in 2.0, there'll be a Kafka interface, and there'll be something that interfaces with the Kafka interface for 2.0. Theoretically, you could imagine that everything else it stays the same really, and yeah, the data model updating that I talked about, that will change. So you'll have a data model for 2.0 that needs to be updated, and it would be through the Kafka interface. So if we were to implement, if we were to have this common functionality out into its own repo, and a good place could be the existing repo, which has the agent, which has the driver, because it also has the protobuf over there. It will be a self-contained repo that has all the OpenOLT stuff in it, which includes the driver, the protobuf between the driver and the adapter, and the common, and this part, the core of the adapter. And that code could be reused by 1.x and 2.0. So, for example, in 1.x, to use that code from 1.x, you could have Git submodules, or you could have a repo. We could use the repo tool, but but it's possible for the existing 1.x to function in this way, where we move off the code of the adapter off into a separate repo. And that would allow us to use this common code from from the 2.0 containerized code base. So that could be a repo of its own, or it could be in the OpenOLT repo. It could be in the repo that Ken has created for adapters. So the container would look like this. The OpenOLT container would look like this, where it has all this, but the code is coming out of maybe two repos, where this is the common part is one repo, and the OpenOLT adapter part, which interfaces with the 2.0 interface, is somewhere separate. Similarly, this part over here, the 1.x could remain in the VOLTHA repo, existing VOLTHA repo. So theoretically, we have three repos. We have the old VOLTHA repo that contains just this part over here, the OpenOLT adapter, because we need that as an interface to the adapter interface. And then we have a common repo that consists of all the common code that can be shared between 1.x and 2.0. And then you have this OpenOLT adapter 2.0, which could be in this common adapters repo that we have. So that's just some thoughts over here. There's nothing being really done, but no coding experimenting done yet. But I think at least I'm freeing up after the BBWF demo in a couple of weeks, and we have interest from others from HCL who may be joining us in this as well. So we need some kind of a direction to get started. So I wanted to share this high-level thoughts. That's it, Julie, from my side. So any questions, if you have any thoughts?
So Shad, you mentioned the data models in the core, right? Are you going to be re-implementing a copy of the data model there on the left?
This is the interface to the data model. So right now we call adapter agent dot update device, update logical device, and things like that. So this would be like a common interface to both the 1.x and 2.0. So that we are not calling adapter agent, but we're calling something like a shim layer in the middle. And that is calling for 1.x, it's calling the adapter agent, and for 2.0, it's calling whatever the new interface is.
I get it. So it's a data model class that manages your communication.
Right. It's a data model proxy kind of a thing.
Yeah. Okay. I got it. Okay.
In 2.0, what we have to talk to the core, any communication goes over something that I call the core proxy. So anything that has to go in the core, whether it's data model or anything else, will need to use the core proxy interface.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure. I haven't studied. I mean, I'm not very familiar right now with the 2.0. Yeah. So this data model proxy would use that interface for 2.0, and then for 1.x, it would just call the existing adapter agent.
Okay.
I'm trying to use this common code base agnostic of what it's talking to.
Yeah, that's the whole point when we're trying to do the 2.0 is so that we don't have to write everything from zero for the adapters. So we design it a certain way so that you can have the model that you're proposing at this time. So that's good.
Okay. So that's about it, Julie. So
okay. Any other questions for Shad? All right. I'm not hearing any. Oh, go ahead. Was there a comment?
No, I said no. Reuse is good. So I think this is a good direction.
Great. Thanks. I'll go ahead and take presentation rights back. And you should be seeing my screen again. And Shad, I think I'm going to ask you one question. I don't have it specifically called out on the agenda, but it's related to the code freeze we had last week. I haven't seen anything new from Sarov indicating we can start merging in the tech profile related changes. Do you know if we're still under that code freeze?
No. I guess we should have sent out some email. Yeah. So the tags are done for
okay.
For all the repos.
Okay. So we're clear to merge in whatever we want at this point then.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Then hopefully everyone's seeing the agenda here. So we've covered the first item. We just covered the first of the new JIRA. So let's go back and continue with that. 1277 is BBSIM adapter based on Acme adapter. And this one is done, and it was from Keita-san. And we have a description down here related to this work. Any comments or questions? Okay, the next item was a defect opened, and this was 1278, BBSIM, adding BBSIM ID for generating a unique data path ID. And this one was complete as well. And it looks like I didn't get it mapped into a sprint, but this one is done. And then any comments or questions? And the next one, 1279, is complete all the gRPC NBI API handling. And this one was opened by Ken and is assigned for sprint 9. Any questions or comments from the group? All right. Next item is 1280, BBSIM generating serial number problem. And this was the defect opened by Keita-san, and it was completed in sprint 8. And this one is done as well. Okay. Then going on to the next, 1281, update OpenOLT protobus to support per interface device information. And this one was opened by Craig and assigned to himself as well for sprint 9. Any quick comments or questions?
I decomposed the story for the use case for supporting multiple pools and resource manager into several independent tasks, and this is one of those for the gRPC protobuf changes that I'll be sending out some recommendations and getting advice from the community here today.
Okay, great, thanks. And going on to the next item, 1282, BBSIM add reboot related features, and this one was completed and as for sprint 8 as well. One moment, please. I keep coughing today. I will try to hit mute in time, but pardon me if I do cough over the bridge. I'll try not to. 1283, callbacks registered to subpath proxy are not picked up. And so this one was opened by Stefan and is in progress. I'm thinking probably we need to put this one into sprint 9.
Yeah, this would be sprint 9. Okay. I believe it's a kind of completed, but I need to double check.
Okay, okay. So I'll put it in sprint 9 for now, and then if it's done, then it can be closed out. All right, any questions on this item before we move on? Then 1284 is the next one, a mechanism to, oh, and this is one, I think we had cloned an earlier one. We had an action item to create a new issue to duplicate the functionality, but have it, I'll just go back to our old one so you can see the discussion train. So this one had been opened previously in a different context and had a bunch of comments focusing on console, and so we decided it was cleanest to just replace it with a new story applying to etcd. So we created a new one and just kind of copied it over. If it needs editing, then we can have folks go ahead and update that if needed. So that's where this one came from. It was doing some cleanup and bringing it back in a clean context for inclusion. Any questions?
That's not 2.0, right?
Well, it was there. I think that's where it was placed in the old story, so it kept that. So does this need to be future?
I think so, yes.
Is that the future? Okay. All right, thanks. And then the next item is 1285. VOLTHA CLI adds a 1 to the OLT OF DPID of the logical device. And Ken, you may need to go back on mute. Thanks. Okay, and this one was reported by Luca, and Shad is assigned to you currently. Any questions or comments that we need to take back to Luca or Shad? Have you discussed this with him?
Oh, actually, I just saw this. Yeah.
Okay.
But
he probably assigned it to you, I guess, then.
Yeah. So yeah.
Okay.
So I think at some point, yeah, we do add a 1 to the DPID. I don't know what's the reasoning behind it, but yeah, I don't think it's a bug, but it's I don't know why we do it. I'll figure it out. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. And if you can just add a comment in here, once you've had that discussion with them, that'd be great. All right, next item is 1286, OpenOLT, remove unused code after the intro of Resource Manager. So this one is already complete at this point, and we have a brief description of it down here as well. So this was something that was from before intro of Resource Manager, and that particular action is no longer needed after the integration with Resource Manager. Any questions? Then moving on to the next, 1287, this is for containerization of the Celestica OLT adapter to interface with the 2.0 via the Kafka message bus. And so Sean had opened that one. It's currently unassigned, but that is a new story for tracking the containerization effort. And I know Sean's not on the bridge today, but any questions? Okay, and I did want to have some time later today if we are able to just briefly talk about what we just think the schedule will look like for the containerization effort for the adapters. Next item, 1288, OpenOLT update driver to use new per interface ranges. And Craig, this is a story that you had entered as well. We've got the description down here. Any questions for this on the call today?
Yes, Shad, the intent here is just to pull the information that we've been working on and getting the OpenOLT driver to get the different interface configurations and then pass it back to the adapter using the new interface that I'll propose in the other task.
Thank you. And then we have a similar one for updating the resource manager to support per interface ranges as well. And that's 1289.
And this would be the bulk of the work of providing separate management of pool resources for each of the interfaces in the adapter.
Any questions from the group? All right. Then the next two stories are for TELAB specific, and that's TELAB's OpenOLT adapter in 1290. And then 1291 is TELAB's OpenOMCI adapter. And so those are being derived from OpenOLT and the OpenOMCI for those two. I think, let me do a refresh here.
That's
think
the
that's it for our news story.
ONU adapter, right? Not the, or is it going to be a new OMCI, OpenOMCI implementation?
It'll be derived from the Broadcom OpenOMCI ONU.
Okay, so it's okay.
Just the specialization for the Tel Labs MEs that are supported from the OpenOMCI.
Other questions from the group? All right, then let's go on to our next agenda topic, and that is taking a look here at Sprint 9. So this is scheduled to run through November 2nd. And then we can look at what we have as preliminary scope in JIRA, and some of that did roll over from work in Sprint 8 that was incomplete. And then I wanted to talk about these two JIRAs. I moved them to the top of the backlog so I could find them easily. So let's go over to Sprint 9. I'll go ahead and bring up the Sprint view of it here. Okay, so those are some subtasks that had carried over from previous work. Okay, and in Sprint 9, we do have work going on for the VOLTHA Core 2.0 data model and a number of related subtasks there. And then we have work on the gRPC API handler in Go. And then some, whoops, sorry, clicked on the wrong thing there. Let me close this back up. Okay, and I think this task carried over from Sprint 8, I think, for the southbound interface with the intercontainer Kafka library, implement the VOLTHA Core southbound API. And then we have our list of other issues below that. So some of them have carried over. Let's look at the in progress first, and some of these are continued work from Sprint 8, and we have the switch the VOLTHA deployment from Docker to Kubernetes. And that one is in, all of these we'll look at right now are in progress. We've got the defect for Vol 12.11, ONU stuck in initial MIB downloaded state after reboot. And if there's anything that needs discussion from the group, please go ahead and stop me. And then 10.22 is another defect. Whoops, sorry, a high priority item. Sorry about that. Reporting of ONU registration IDs from VOLTHA. And this one, let's see if we've got Venkata on. Okay, Venkata is not on the bridge, so we may need to circle back with this on resources to make sure we get this one in. So this one is in target for Sprint 9 as well. 1273 is BBSIM containerization. And that had some pending work still, I think. Last we looked at it in Sprint 8. And then 1082 is removing XPON from the core, and that's part of the restructure work for the core. Then we had some tech profile related items that were on hold for the merges pending the code freeze we had last week. So I think we'll need to see what we can do to get those items closed out and merged in. I think there was some related ONOS work, so we should probably circle back with Saurav. Yeah, I believe he was going to do the related merge on the ONOS side so that we could then follow up with the merges for 732 and some other things in on the VOLTHA side. So we'll see if we can get that moving forward. And then we have 184, the ONU software upgrade based on the OpenOMCI framework. And then we've got MIB resynchronization task with tech profiles. And we have a defect 1242 open, VOLTHA not connecting to several controllers. And this one, I believe there was a comment that had been made back in Garrett, and it's awaiting response. So I think we still need to have Daniel take a look at that if I remember correctly. And then 1260, this one is for testing the Arcadian ONU. And we had added a comment last time. We're going to keep this open until we have a fix for a specific issue from Arcadian. And then 1265, infinite loop MIB uploading with OpenOMCI MIB upload task. And this one is in progress currently. And I'm scrolling down too far. Let me get, here we go. And 1267, support ONUs that use VEIP uni type. So that work is in progress as well. I believe we had some discussion last week. And then 1270, augment the resource manager to allow for per port initialization of TC layer attributes. And then 1283, callbacks registered to subpath proxy are not picked up. And I think we just discussed that as well. And so that's it for the in-progress items we have at the moment. I'm going to not refresh my screen right at the moment because I may lose track of what we've covered and what we haven't. Okay, so in other items we have, there are a number that carried over from Sprint 8 that we're still to do. And then we have new ones added in that are in the to-do column as well. So we do still need to work on finding resources for some of this work and make sure also that everything is still, since this is our last planned at the moment development sprint for 2.0, making sure we have the right items covered in here so that we're spending our resources on the correct stories at this point. Okay, so 483, this is the clear alarms not working on the edge core adapter in device. And I think this was an intermittent issue and we're waiting for a response from Broadcom was the last update we had in here. So that one is still in the to-do state. And then we've got a tech profile related story here, 1093. Establishment of authentication data path after subscribe for logical port reported to ONOS in port status OpenFlow message. And so that one, I think, probably needs some of the other work to go forward first, so we're trying to get those merges done. And VOL 1200, BBSIM shall support Broadcom OpenOMCI ONU adapter. And that one is planned for this release is for Sprint 9 as well. And was there a comment or a question? All right. Then 699, external MIB database enhancement is in the to-do state. And then we've got a few more OpenOMCI related ones here. And the next one is 720, the alarm published to Kafka. And then the alarm audit and resync. Then we switch over now to some correlated work. We've got the affinity router, building the affinity router for VOLTA. And then we've got a number of defects as well. I think these carried over from Sprint 8, 1078, data flows did not match untagged traffic. And then 1104.
So I need, the affinity router needs to be tagged to me.
Let's see. And it is.
Okay, good. And it's in progress. I don't know if I.
Okay. Let me move that to in progress then. Thanks. Okay. And then we've got the next item. Actually, let me move back here. 1104. Were there any questions or comments there? Okay. The next to do was 1130, and this one I believe there was a workaround, so this one is still on the back burner. This was related to Envoy building requires sudo, and so that one is still, I think, targeted, but is not actively being worked as we're doing other issues at the moment. So if there's any questions on that item? Okay. Next item is the Broadcom OpenOMCI restart and resync, and that's 1132. And this one is unassigned as well. So Matt, you had reported this.
This one relates to the work CHIP's doing on the MIB resync after an ONU restart.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
So I kind of just left it sitting there until that came along, and then when I get a chance to try it out and change any of the Broadcom OpenOMCI adapter, I'll adapt and work on it.
Thanks. Thanks for refreshing my memory. I remember that now, and I think once the other stuff was in place, then we were going to move it back and assign it to you, but that's why it's unassigned at the moment. Okay, thanks. And 952 is the next item, and this one is published on the OpenOLT README, the UNI ports and NNI ports that the OpenOLT uses. And then 1090 is the operational status ONT UNI port data, and it's got a description down there of the retrieved parameters for this story. And this one is currently unassigned as well. And then we've got a subtask on installing and configuring Kubernetes on a test node. And then 1221 is related to tech profiles. And this is OpenOLT support for tech profiles and meters. And then next is an AdTran OLT related story for supporting the resource manager. And then we've got a couple defects here. 1264, unable to override methods of OpenOLT. And that one is assigned to Shad currently and was opened by Katasan. And then we've got an OMCI CLI show command returns error. And this one is currently unassigned, but it is a low priority item. And a few more here related to OpenOLT. So 1281, we just talked about these under the new issue. So 1281, 1288, and 1289 were some of the ones we reviewed just a little bit ago. And the new ones also for the TELADS adapters, 1290 and 1291. So that's what we have currently set up for the scope. And that's going to bring me back now. I want to go to a couple specific items to see if we think those can be pulled into the sprint. I know it's in a rather full sprint at this point, but based on some of the discussion I saw in the comments on JIRA, I thought it was worth bringing these two specific items at least up for discussion on today's call. So that's 1020 and 1023. So I think I'll start with 1020. I believe that may be the higher priority out of the two. So these were, I think, both initially we had hoped to target them for Sprint 8, and at this point they are still not being worked or not mapped into a sprint. So the first one is 1020, support configuring ONU to not add or remove the CVLAN tag. And in the latest comments we have from Bjorn, this is the lack of this item actually is preventing them moving to VOLTHA 2.x. And so that's sort of puts a high priority on this item. So DT cannot move on to 2.x until they have support for this. So let me see if we've got Bjorn on the bridge today. I don't see him on the bridge. Okay. So we do have the comments in here from him. So there is a question out from Sean first, and then a response from Bjorn. So at this point, I don't think we have any resources identified to work on it. I don't know if we have anyone in the group on the call today that is available to volunteer for that. So let me first then ask the group, in terms of prioritization of features, is this something that you think we should see if we can get someone to support it in Sprint 9? Should we go ahead and map it in and then work the resource issue on the side? Any comments from the group? a quiet bunch today. Okay. I would like to see if we can get this in for development, since it's considered a blocking issue for one of the service providers moving to 2.0. If we don't have resources, we don't obviously have a way to get that done. So that needs to be worked. So I didn't hear any comments, so I think I'll leave it in the backlog still today, but have some side dialogue. Maybe I'll reach out to Bjorn and ask him some questions, and I'll talk to Sean as well. I know Sean's out this week, and see what we can do, because I think we do need to prioritize this for 2.0. And then the next item is 1023, supporting multiple unis per ONU. And this one, I think it was lower priority for Deutsche Telekom than 1020, which we just discussed. But Craig, I saw you'd added some comments here as well, that you would like to see this continue to stay in scope for 2.0. So Craig, I know you're on the call today. I don't know if you have any additional comments to add with the group today.
Well, we definitely see markets that have use more than one uni on an ONT, and that they're not aggregated together as one logical service, especially in the optical LAN market, but also multi-dwelling unit applications in the access space. So it seems like, as we've evaluated VOLTHA, that's been one of the limitations from our perspective, and that's why I kind of indicated that it is of importance to us at some point in time to be able to get multiple unis on an ONT to function.
Okay, thanks, Craig. Any other discussion from the group? Okay, so again, I think it's going to come down to resource issues. You probably guessed from my putting these two on the agenda today that I thought it would be worth trying to see if we could scope these in for Sprint 9. I'm not hearing I have support at the moment, I think, as we don't have resources available. So we may have to just continue discussion in the background. So like I said, I can talk with Sean and I can talk with Bjorn, and maybe we can revisit the discussion when we have them on the call at some point as well. Okay, then we do have a number of other issues in the backlog, and it looks like I need to do some reordering again. Things have gotten a little bit mixed up in the backlog again, but a number of issues here. And if we look back at our original schedule, then this was Sprint 9 as targeted as the last development sprint for 2.0. And then we were going to focus on HA and integration testing after that. So with that, that kind of brings me to what I wanted to talk about with the schedule for the containerization of the adapters. So I think that was sort of, when we originally looked at it earlier in the planning for 2.0, this was going to sort of do a fast follow from the containerization of PONSIM. So that was going to serve as sort of the example case for the containerization effort to be done by vendors for their own adapters as needed, for example. And since we're now at that point, we're at the last development sprint, I'm not quite sure how we want to position these things or what we do in terms of the schedule for the containerization. So any thoughts from the group or suggestions?
Well, the PONSIM container, we're running PONSIM adapters into containers. It will pretty much have most of the functionalities that it has today by end of this sprint. There may be a few things that are missing, but the gist of it will be there. And it would be good, I think it would be enough for anybody who wants to start containerizing the adapters to start to look at it.
Okay. So I had thought I had the, let's see, where is the wiki? I thought I had this up on my screen, and then I noticed I don't. So apologies while I bring up our planning slide here. I forgot I'd rebooted my computer, and so my open items closed up. So I guess where I was getting hung up when I was looking at the scheduling, whoops, was on this slide, because we'd had for sprint 10 that the containerization of the adapters had to be complete for us to go on to that next phase for the integration testing in a Kubernetes cluster environment. So if this is not, so if we think probably the containerization of the other adapters would be happening more in sprint 10, I'm not quite sure if I'm interpreting that right. Is that what we think would happen, in which case this criterion isn't met?
I mean, to me, this says that the new VOLTHA Core 2.0 needs to be ready for adapters, and then pick I guess the two in my head that are used, OpenOLT and Broadcom OpenOMCI, and then any others that those are the first two that I can think of that
right.
need work on. But I mean, I haven't personally done any work with it yet, so and I don't know how long it will take, but I suspect there could be more than a few days of work there, and at this point I'm not planning on starting it in the short term.
Okay.
Yeah, for at least the Broadcom OpenOMCI one, I can't speak for anybody else, but we certainly, step one, will need a Go core running and ready, and then we'll look at trying it out and seeing.
Okay, so I guess maybe one approach I can think about here is it could be perhaps at least the first part of sprint 10 would be focused in part on the containerization of the OpenOLT adapter and the Broadcom OpenOMCI ONU adapter, and then remaining time, but we might need to look at durations and everything to make sure we have sufficient time for the testing. And I know some testing has been done with the old core. Gotten that feedback from Nick when he was here. Okay.
One thing of note, it's in 2.0, since we have moved the device management and a number of functionalities into the core, the code of the adapters would be a little bit simpler, but no matter what, it will be a lot of changes in the adapters. So I don't think that it will take one sprint for an adapter to finish containerization.
Okay, so that approach of almost or just sequencing the work in sprint 10 may work then, as long as we have enough time for the HA testing. Okay, all right. So I'll keep that as kind of my initial plan for sprint 10, looking at focusing the first effort in sprint 10 on the containerization of the adapters as a fast follow to what's delivered in sprint 9 on the containerization for the PON-SIM adapter. Okay, that helps. Thanks, everyone. As I was getting stuck with trying to figure out how this was going to fit into the timeline, so I appreciate the feedback. Okay, I think we've got a handful of minutes left for a change. That doesn't normally happen. So I'll add some notes here about planning to, in sprint 10 at the beginning, work on the containerization of the OpenOLT adapter and the Broadcom OpenOMCI ONU adapter. And then, we can have comments come back to me if I capture anything incorrectly there. Okay, so I think that covers it for what we need to discuss today. Again, since this is our last development sprint targeted for 2.0, Then if there's anything else in the backlog that needs to be pulled in as a critical item for 2.0, please bring it up to my attention so that we can address that. And I know that DT did bring up that one from their side, so I'll go back and have some side discussion with them and with Sean on that. And get back to the right screen here. Okay, so for the upcoming demos and work that we have, we don't have anything slated for deep dive discussions on this Thursday. So we can, we'll see if something comes up between now and then. So we do have, after the Broadband World Forum, a discussion that we want to have on multicast. And so that will be in a few weeks. And then we did have a request for an overview of the FTTB related changes as well. And then towards the end of Sprint 9, or just after Sprint 9, a demo of Ponson V2, and hopefully with the containerized support for the adapter, that may be useful at that time. So Ken, we can talk about timing for this and figure out what makes sense for the team so that we don't hinder the development work and so that we can get the most benefit out of it for a demo for the community as well. But I know I have been receiving requests from some folks as they're starting to think about containerization of their adapters. I've been getting requests for demos, and so we're trying to slot that in when it first looks appropriate. And I think that's it for today. Any other topics that need to be discussed with the group before we break for today's meeting? All right, I think that's it then. I will stop the recording.